Tonight, dear friend, allow your breathing to slow. Allow the noise of the world to fade into the distance. Allow your thoughts to drift like clouds moving across a quiet evening sky. There is nowhere to go. Nothing to accomplish. Nothing to prove. Only a story. An ancient Buddhist story. A story carried through centuries by monks, teachers, and seekers of wisdom. A story about beauty. A story about discipline. A story about desire. And about how even the wisest among us may stumble when the mind loses its awareness. Long ago, in the ancient kingdom of Benares, when kings ruled vast lands and forests stretched farther than any traveler could walk, there existed a mountain range unlike any other. The mountains rose from the earth like golden waves frozen in time. Their peaks pierced the clouds. Their valleys hid crystal rivers. Their forests sheltered countless creatures. Deer wandered beneath ancient trees. Monkeys swung through branches heavy with fruit. Bright birds crossed the sky like living jewels. And above them all stood a sacred mountain known as Dandaka Golden Mountain. Its summit touched the heavens. Its cliffs shimmered beneath the sunlight. Its caves echoed with the voices of wind and time. Few humans ever reached its highest places. Fewer still returned. For this was a realm where nature ruled undisturbed. A realm of silence. A realm of peace. And it was here that a remarkable life would begin. Not inside a palace. Not within a temple. Not among kings or sages. But within a single egg. One season, during the time of flowering trees and warm southern winds, a female peacock wandered through the forests surrounding the mountain. She searched for food among grasses and roots. The days passed peacefully. The forests were rich. The rivers clear. Life seemed generous. Yet unknown even to her, she carried within her a future that would someday influence an entire kingdom. One afternoon, while moving through a secluded clearing, she laid an egg upon the earth. The egg rested among tall grasses beneath the open sky. Then, following her natural instincts, the peahen departed. No nest sheltered the egg. No parent remained nearby. No guardian stood watch. The egg lay alone, exposed to the world. Yet fate had chosen a different path for this tiny life. The days passed. Then weeks. Sunlight warmed the shell during the day. Moonlight bathed it at night. Gentle rains washed the surrounding earth. The wind whispered through the grasses. Yet nothing disturbed it. No snake discovered it. No predator found it. No storm destroyed it. It remained untouched. Protected by circumstances no one could fully explain. Sometimes life is like that. We plan endlessly for the future. Yet many of the greatest blessings arrive through causes we never see. The egg continued resting beneath the sky, patiently waiting. The forests changed around it. Flowers bloomed and faded. Birds migrated. Clouds gathered and dispersed. Still it waited. Until one morning, as dawn painted the eastern horizon with shades of gold and crimson, a small crack appeared upon the shell. Then another. Then another. The moment had arrived. Life was awakening. Slowly, the shell began opening. Tiny pieces fell away. A small golden beak emerged. Then a pair of bright eyes. Finally, the young peacock pushed free from the shell and entered the world. The forest seemed to pause, as though nature itself wished to witness the event. For this was no ordinary bird. The young peacock's feathers shimmered with a radiant golden glow. His eyes resembled precious red jewels. His beak shone like polished coral. 3 crimson lines stretched elegantly from his throat across his back. Even as a newborn, he appeared extraordinary. Beautiful beyond comparison. The first rays of sunrise touched his feathers. The golden light reflected brilliantly. The entire clearing seemed illuminated. The young bird blinked at the world around him. The sky above. The trees around him. The earth beneath him. Everything was new. Everything was mysterious. Everything was alive. Like all newborn creatures, he knew nothing of kingdoms. Nothing of destiny. Nothing of future trials. He simply existed. Breathing. Observing. Learning. The forest became his first teacher. The wind taught movement. The rivers taught patience. The mountains taught stillness. And the silence taught something deeper. Awareness. The young peacock grew steadily. Days became months. Months became years. His golden feathers became even more magnificent. His body grew strong. His mind became calm. Unlike many creatures, he rarely acted impulsively. Even from a young age, a quiet wisdom seemed to live within him. Other animals noticed. Birds noticed. The forests noticed. And slowly, without seeking attention, the young peacock became known throughout the mountains. A creature unlike any other. A being whose beauty reflected something deeper than appearance. Something hidden. Something ancient. Something carried from previous lives. Far above the forests, the sun continued its journey across the sky. The mountain winds continued singing their endless songs, and high among the sacred peaks, destiny quietly prepared the next chapter. For the golden peacock's life had only just begun. And one day, kings would hear his name. One day, entire kingdoms would seek him. One day, a single moment of forgotten mindfulness would change everything. But that day had not yet come. For now, the young peacock rested beneath the evening sky, listening to the wind, watching the stars, and growing steadily toward the destiny that awaited him. The years passed gently across the mountains. Seasons came and went like waves upon a distant shore. Spring covered the valleys with flowers. Summer warmed the cliffs beneath endless blue skies. Autumn painted the forests in shades of gold and crimson. Winter wrapped the higher peaks in silver mist. The mountain remained. The rivers continued flowing. And the young golden peacock continued growing. Each year, his beauty became more extraordinary. His feathers shimmered like sunlight reflected upon polished gold. His eyes shone with deep intelligence. His movements possessed a natural grace that seemed effortless. Whenever he crossed a forest clearing, animals paused to watch. Whenever he spread his magnificent tail, even the brightest birds appeared playing beside him. Yet what impressed others most was not his appearance. It was his character. Beauty alone attracts attention. Wisdom earns respect. The golden peacock possessed both. As he matured, he learned the rhythms of the mountain. He learned where the sweetest fruits could be found. He learned which streams remained fresh during the dry season. He learned how storms moved through the valleys. He learned the language of the wind, the language of silence. And most importantly, he learned how to govern his own mind. This was a lesson many creatures never learn. The mountain often taught him through observation. He watched monkeys quarrel over fruit. He watched deer panic over imagined dangers. He watched birds compete for territory. Again and again he noticed the same thing. Many creatures suffered not because of the world around them, but because of the thoughts within them. Desire, fear, jealousy, pride. These invisible forces caused more suffering than claws or teeth. The young peacock reflected deeply upon such things. Even before understanding them fully, he sensed their power. As time passed, other peacocks began gathering around him. At first, only a few. Then dozens. Then hundreds. They admired his wisdom. They trusted his judgment. When disputes arose, they sought his guidance. When danger appeared, they followed his lead. The golden peacock never demanded authority. He never claimed superiority. Yet leadership found him naturally. Because true leadership is rarely seized, it is usually recognized. One evening, beneath a sky glowing with sunset colors, the peacocks gathered in a wide meadow. Hundreds of brilliant birds stood together. The mountain breeze moved softly through their feathers. The golden peacock stood among them, quiet as always. One of the elder peacocks stepped forward. "We wish you to lead us." The meadow became silent. The golden peacock lowered his head respectfully. "I am no different from any of you." The elder smiled. "That is exactly why you should lead." A murmur of agreement spread through the flock. The young peacock remained silent. Leadership had never been his ambition. Yet he understood responsibility. Sometimes duty arrives whether we seek it or not. At last, he nodded. Not out of pride. Not out of desire. Out of service. And so, from that day forward, he became their king. The Peacock King. The guardian of the mountain flocks. The protector of countless birds. Yet unlike many rulers, power did not change him. If anything, it made him more humble. He understood something many kings forget. A ruler does not exist for himself. A ruler exists for those he serves. The years continued passing. The Peacock King's fame spread across the mountains. Animals spoke of his beauty. Birds spoke of his wisdom. Travelers occasionally glimpsed him from afar and returned home with stories that sounded almost mythical. Some claimed he glowed at sunrise. Others said the forest itself became peaceful when he appeared. Many stories were exaggerated. Yet all contained a grain of truth. For the Peacock King possessed a rare quality. His presence brought calm. And calm is often more valuable than power. Eventually, the Peacock King made a decision. A decision that would shape the rest of his life. Far above the valleys rose the highest peak of Dandaka Golden Mountain. Few creatures ventured there. The cliffs were steep. The winds were strong. The path was difficult. Yet the summit offered something precious. Solitude. The Peacock King understood the danger of comfort. He understood the danger of constant praise. He understood that even wise minds can become distracted. So he chose to live apart from the flock. Not because he disliked them. Because he wished to protect his discipline. Upon the highest summit stood a flat stone overlooking the world. Clouds drifted below it. The sunrise appeared there before anywhere else. The sunset lingered there longer than in the valleys. The Peacock King made this place his home. Each morning, before the first light touched the earth, he awoke. He faced the eastern horizon. He watched the sun emerge from darkness. And as the first golden rays appeared, he recited sacred verses. Ancient words of mindfulness. Ancient words of protection. Words that reminded him to remain awake, to remain careful, to remain pure in thought and action. Then he began his day. Each evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the western mountains, he recited them again. The ritual never changed. Day after day, year after year, season after season, the practice became part of his being. A shield not made of stone, a shield not made of iron, a shield made of awareness. For many years, this discipline protected him. Temptations came and went. Distractions appeared and vanished. Yet his mind remained steady. The Peacock King chose a life few could understand. Though surrounded by beautiful peahens throughout his life, he refused to pursue desire. Though admired by countless birds, he refused to become proud. Though blessed with extraordinary beauty, he refused vanity. The years accumulated. 1 decade became 10. 10 became 100. 100 became several centuries. Still the Peacock King remained faithful to his discipline. The mountain became his companion. The wind became his teacher. The sunrise became his daily reminder. 700 years passed. 700 years of mindfulness. 700 years of restraint. 700 years without surrendering to desire. Few beings in the world possessed such mastery. And because of this, the Peacock King became known not only for his beauty, but for his purity. Yet even after 700 years, a danger remained. A danger that no mountain could keep away. A danger that no distance could completely avoid. A danger that lives within every mind. Desire. Patient. Silent. Waiting. And far away, beyond the mountains, events were already beginning to unfold. A hunter would soon glimpse the golden bird. A king would soon hear a rumor. A queen would soon have a dream. And destiny, which had waited quietly for centuries, was slowly approaching. The Peacock King's greatest test had not yet arrived. But it was coming. Closer with every sunrise. "700 years passed like drifting clouds. The world below changed many times. Kings were born and died. Cities expanded and declined. Children became elders. Elders became memories. Yet high upon the summit of Dandaka Golden Mountain, the Peacock King remained. Every morning he greeted the rising sun. Every evening he watched the light fade beyond the western horizon. His discipline never wavered. His awareness remained sharp. His heart remained peaceful. The mountain had become his kingdom. The sky his companion. The wind his teacher. And so the years flowed onward. Yet while the Peacock King lived in quiet seclusion, events were beginning to unfold far away. Events that would eventually reach even the highest mountain. One autumn morning, a hunter entered the forests near Dandaka Mountain. He was experienced, patient, skilled in reading tracks and signs. For many years he had wandered through forests searching for game. Few animals could hide from his eyes. That day, he traveled farther than usual. The mountain paths became steep. The trees grew ancient and dense. The air felt cooler. The hunter paused beside a rocky ridge to rest. As he drank from a mountain stream, something caught his attention. A flash of gold. At first he thought it was sunlight. Then he looked again. The golden shape moved gracefully among the cliffs. The hunter's eyes widened. For a moment, he wondered whether he was dreaming. There, standing upon a distant ledge, was the most beautiful bird he had ever seen. The Peacock King. Golden feathers shimmered beneath the sunlight. His long tail flowed like liquid gold. His crimson markings glowed against the brightness of his plumage. The hunter had never imagined such a creature could exist. He remained frozen, afraid even to breathe. The Peacock King stood quietly for a few moments. Then, with effortless grace, he spread his wings and disappeared into the mountain mist. The hunter continued staring long after he had vanished. His heart raced. His mind struggled to understand what he had seen. Eventually, he returned home. But he never forgot. And when his son later asked why he seemed distracted, the hunter told him everything. The golden bird. The sacred mountain. The impossible beauty. The son listened carefully. The story remained within the family, waiting, like a seed hidden beneath the earth, waiting for the right season to grow. Years later, in the great city of Benares, another event occurred. Far removed from the mountain, far removed from the hunter, yet strangely connected. The Queen of Benares was a wise and thoughtful woman. She was respected throughout the kingdom. Though she lived within a palace surrounded by luxury, she often reflected upon deeper matters. She wondered about virtue, about wisdom, about the meaning of a good life. One evening, after a day of ceremonies and royal duties, she retired to her chambers. The palace grew quiet. Torches flickered softly in the corridors. Servants withdrew. The city beyond the walls settled into sleep. The queen closed her eyes and dreamed. Dreams are mysterious things. Some are born from memory, some from desire, some from fear, and sometimes, according to ancient traditions, they arrive carrying messages. The queen's dream felt different from ordinary dreams. More vivid, more real. She found herself standing within a vast golden hall. The air glowed with warm light. The atmosphere felt peaceful beyond description. Before her stood a magnificent throne. Upon it sat a golden peacock. Not an ordinary peacock. A radiant being whose feathers shone like sunlight. His eyes reflected wisdom. His presence radiated calm. The queen felt no fear, only reverence. The Peacock King looked at her kindly. Then he began to speak. His voice was gentle, clear, like water flowing over smooth stones. The words he spoke seemed unlike anything she had ever heard. He spoke of compassion. He spoke of self-control. He spoke of the restless nature of desire. He spoke of how happiness cannot be found through endless craving. The queen listened attentively. Each sentence filled her heart with peace. Each word seemed to reveal a deeper truth. She wished the teaching would never end. Yet dreams are fragile. The vision slowly began fading. The golden hall dissolved into light. The Peacock King's voice grew distant. The queen reached forward, trying to hear more, trying to remain. But the dream slipped away, and she awoke. Morning sunlight filtered through the palace windows. Birds sang in the gardens below. The dream was over, yet its impact remained. The queen sat upright. Her heart still felt full. Her mind still echoed with the teachings she had heard. For a long time, she remained silent. The dream felt too important to dismiss, too vivid to ignore. When King Brahmadatta joined her later that morning, he immediately noticed something unusual. "You seem troubled." The queen shook her head. "Not troubled." She hesitated, moved. The king sat beside her. "What happened?" The queen carefully described the dream. The golden hall, the radiant bird, the teachings, the peace she had experienced. The king listened closely. When she finished, he remained thoughtful. A golden peacock, a creature speaking wisdom. The image fascinated him. Finally, he summoned the royal Brahmins, the wisest scholars in the kingdom. When they arrived, he recounted the dream and asked, "Does such a creature truly exist?" The Brahmins exchanged glances. Several appeared surprised. Then the eldest among them stepped forward. His beard was white with age. His eyes reflected years of study. He bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty." The king listened. "There are ancient stories." The court became silent. Stories of a golden peacock living upon Dandaka Golden Mountain. A murmur spread through the chamber. The queen felt her heart quicken. The Brahmin continued. "Many believe he is no ordinary bird." The king leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The old scholar lowered his voice. "It is said that he possesses extraordinary wisdom." The palace seemed to grow quieter. Then another Brahmin spoke. "There are also legends." The king turned toward him. "What legends?" The scholar hesitated. Then answered. "Some say that whoever eats the flesh of the golden peacock will gain immortality." The words hung in the air. The queen immediately frowned. Something about the claim felt wrong. Yet the king remained silent. Immortality. Freedom from aging. Freedom from death. The idea entered his mind. And once such an idea enters the human heart, it can be difficult to remove. The king gazed toward the distant mountains visible beyond the palace windows. Far away, almost hidden by clouds, a strange desire had begun to awaken within him. Meanwhile, high upon Dandaka Golden Mountain, the Peacock King greeted another sunrise. He recited his sacred verses. He watched the light spread across the world, and he remained completely unaware that his life was about to change. A dream had been dreamed. A rumor had been spoken. A desire had been born. And together, they were setting destiny into motion. The greatest challenge of the Peacock King's life was drawing closer with every passing day. The days following the queen's dream passed quietly. Yet beneath the surface of palace life, something had changed. A thought had entered the king's mind. A simple thought. A dangerous thought. A thought that has tempted rulers, warriors, scholars, and ordinary people throughout history. The desire to escape death. King Brahmadatta tried to dismiss it at first. After all, he was a wise ruler. He had governed Benares for many years. He understood that all things eventually pass away. He had witnessed the deaths of ministers, the deaths of soldiers, the deaths of friends, even the deaths of kings before him. Yet knowledge and desire are not always the same. A person may understand a truth with the mind, and still resist it with the heart. The idea remained, returning again and again. whenever he walked through the palace gardens, whenever he looked into a mirror, whenever he noticed another gray hair among his attendants, whenever he heard news of sickness or death, the thought returned. What if it were true? What if the golden peacock really possessed such power? What if immortality could be obtained? At first, the question seemed harmless. A curiosity, nothing more. But curiosity often becomes attachment. And attachment often becomes obsession. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the city walls, the king sat alone in his private chamber. The room was silent except for the soft crackling of oil lamps. Outside, the city was settling into night. Inside, the king's thoughts remained restless. Aging, death, impermanence. No matter how powerful a king might become, none could escape these things. The realization troubled him. He thought of his kingdom, his wealth, his palace, his achievements. One day, all would belong to someone else. The world would continue without him. The thought felt unbearable. Many people fear suffering, but often they fear impermanence even more. The king rose and walked toward an open window. Far in the distance, beyond forests and rivers, stood the mountains. Dark shapes against the fading sky. Somewhere among them lived the golden peacock, a creature said to possess extraordinary qualities. The king stared toward the horizon. The seed planted by the Brahmins had begun to grow. And once desire begins growing, it often seeks nourishment. The following morning, he summoned the royal Brahmins once again. The scholars entered the throne hall and bowed respectfully. The king wasted no time. Tell me everything you know about the golden peacock. The Brahmins exchanged glances. Then they began recounting every story and rumor they had ever heard. Some tales described his beauty. Others praised his wisdom. Many spoke of his unusual golden feathers. And again, the legend returned. The legend of immortality. No one could prove it. No one could explain it. Yet the rumor had existed for generations. The king listened carefully. Each repetition made the story seem more believable. That is often the nature of desire. It accepts evidence that supports its hopes, and ignores evidence that challenges them. Finally, the king made his decision. He would capture the bird. The throne hall fell silent as he issued the command. Find the golden peacock. The ministers shifted uneasily. The Brahmins lowered their eyes. Some sensed trouble. Yet none objected. For kings possess authority. And authority often encourages silence. Messengers spread throughout the kingdom. Orders were delivered. Rewards were promised. Anyone who could capture the golden peacock would receive wealth beyond imagination. News traveled across towns and villages. Eventually, it reached the family of the old hunter. The hunter himself had grown old. His hair had become white. His hands no longer possessed the strength they once had. But his son remembered the story. The golden bird. The mountain. The impossible beauty. When royal officials arrived seeking information, he stepped forward. "I know where the bird lives." The officials immediately brought him before the king. The son described everything his father had witnessed years earlier. The mountain paths. The high cliffs. The region where the golden peacock appeared. The king listened eagerly. At last, he had a lead. A direction. A possibility. The hunter's son was given supplies, servants, and royal support. His mission was clear. Capture the golden peacock alive. The hunter accepted the task. Yet as he prepared for the journey, a strange feeling lingered within him. He had spent much of his life in forests. He respected animals. He respected the mountains, and somehow, the thought of capturing such a magnificent creature felt wrong. Still, a king's order was difficult to refuse. And so he departed. The journey lasted many days. Across rivers. Through forests. Into increasingly remote mountains. Eventually, he reached Dandaka Golden Mountain. The air felt different there. Cleaner. Quieter. Almost sacred. The hunter slowly climbed higher. Carefully observing everything. Searching for signs. Tracks, feathers. Paths, evidence. Eventually he found them. The golden peacock's footprints. Elegant marks pressed into soft earth. The hunter followed them, upward, toward the summit. And there he made an important discovery. Every morning, the Peacock King followed the same route. Every evening, he returned the same way. Years of discipline had created a routine. Predictable. Reliable. The hunter smiled. Even the wisest creatures leave traces. Even the most careful beings develop habits. And habits can become vulnerabilities. Yet despite finding the path, the hunter faced a problem. The Peacock King never approached traps. Never entered dangerous areas. Never acted carelessly. Day after day, the hunter observed him. The golden bird remained impossible to capture. Weeks passed. Then months. The hunter became frustrated. The Peacock King's discipline seemed unbreakable. Unknown to both of them, the answer would soon arrive from an unexpected source. Not from strength. Not from skill. Not from intelligence. but from desire. The very force the Peacock King had successfully resisted for 700 years. The force that has defeated countless wise people before him, and would soon test him as well. Far below the mountain, the hunter began considering a new strategy. One that did not rely on nets alone. One that targeted something much deeper. The heart itself. For every fortress has a gate. Every mind has a weakness. And somewhere within the future, the first crack in 700 years of discipline was beginning to form. The mountain remained peaceful. The sunrise remained beautiful. The Peacock King continued reciting his sacred verses, completely unaware that destiny was drawing ever closer, and that his greatest enemy would not come from outside. It would arise from within. The mountain winds continued their ancient songs. Clouds drifted across the peaks of Dandaka Golden Mountain. Sunrise followed sunrise. Sunset followed sunset. And high above the world, the Peacock King continued living exactly as he had for centuries. Each morning he rose before dawn. Each morning he faced the eastern sky. Each morning he recited the sacred verses that had protected him for 700 years. The practice had become as natural as breathing, as constant as the movement of the stars. Day after day, year after year, the ritual remained unchanged, and because it remained unchanged, the Peacock King felt secure. Perhaps too secure. Far below the summit, however, the hunter's frustration continued growing. Months had passed. The golden bird remained free. Every trap had failed. Every net had been avoided. Every attempt had ended in disappointment. The hunter studied the Peacock King carefully, watching, waiting, learning. The more he observed, the more he understood something remarkable. The Peacock King was not surviving through luck. He was surviving through discipline. Before beginning his daily activities, he always paused, always reflected, always recited his protective verses. Only afterward did he travel through the mountain. The hunter could not understand the sacred words, yet he could see their effect. The Peacock King never acted carelessly, never rushed, never became distracted. His awareness seemed impossible to penetrate. And then one evening, as the hunter sat alone beside a small fire, a memory surfaced. Something his father had once said. Even the strongest chain has a weakest link. The hunter stared into the flames. The words lingered. A weakest link. A weakness. What weakness could a bird possess after 700 years of discipline? The answer came slowly. Not from observation. From understanding. Every creature possesses desires. Every creature. No matter how wise. No matter how disciplined. No matter how enlightened they may appear. The hunter's eyes narrowed. Perhaps the Peacock King's weakness was not his body. Perhaps it was his heart. The idea changed everything. The next day, the hunter descended from the mountain and traveled through nearby forests. His search was not for the golden peacock. It was for another bird. A peahen. After several days, he found one. Young. Healthy. Beautiful. The hunter carefully captured her. Unlike other animals he had trapped, he treated her gently. He fed her, protected her, trained her. Day after day, week after week, the peahen gradually became accustomed to his presence. Then the hunter began teaching her. Whenever he clapped his hands, she would call. Whenever he signaled, she would dance. The training required patience. Many attempts failed. But eventually, the peahen learned. A clap. A graceful movement. A soft call. Again. A clap. A dance. A song. Again. And again, until the response became automatic. The hunter smiled. His plan was ready. The mountain remained unaware. The Peacock King remained unaware. The trap that 700 years of wisdom had avoided was now being prepared. Not a trap of rope. Not a trap of iron. A trap of desire. Several days later, the hunter returned to the mountain. The peahen traveled with him. The journey upward felt different this time. Hope replaced frustration. Confidence replaced uncertainty. When they reached the familiar paths used by the Peacock King, the hunter began his preparations. He located one of the king's favorite routes. A narrow passage between rocky cliffs. The Peacock King often crossed there after completing his morning recitations. The hunter carefully concealed a strong net. Its ropes blended naturally with the surroundings. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing appeared dangerous. Then he hid himself nearby. The peahen waited quietly beside him. The mountain grew silent. The first stars appeared. Night settled across the peaks. The hunter remained patient. He knew the opportunity would come with sunrise. Above them, the Peacock King rested peacefully. As always, his mind calm. His heart undisturbed. 700 years of discipline surrounded him like invisible armor. Yet even armor has limits. Dawn finally arrived. The eastern horizon brightened. Gold spread across the sky. The Peacock King awoke. As always, he climbed to his place of meditation. As always, he faced the rising sun. As always, he began reciting the sacred verses. The familiar words flowed effortlessly. Protecting the mind. Protecting awareness. Protecting wisdom. The mountain seemed filled with peace. The hunter watched from below, waiting. The Peacock King completed his recitation. Everything appeared normal. Everything seemed safe. Then the hunter raised his hands and clapped. Once. The sound echoed softly through the morning air. Immediately the trained peahen responded. She called. A gentle sound. Soft. Musical. Beautiful. The sound floated upward across the mountain. The Peacock King's eyes opened. For 700 years, he had heard countless sounds. The cries of birds. The calls of animals. The songs of the wind. Yet something about this sound felt different. His attention shifted. Only slightly. But enough. The peahen called again. Then she danced. Her feathers shimmered beneath the sunlight. Her movements were graceful. Inviting. Natural. The Peacock King looked down the mountain. A strange feeling stirred within him. A feeling he had not experienced for centuries. Desire. Small at first. Almost insignificant. Like the first spark before a fire. The Peacock King frowned. Part of him recognized the danger immediately. Part of him remembered his discipline. His vows. His years of practice. The sacred verses he had just recited. For a brief moment, awareness and desire stood facing one another. The battle occurred entirely within his own mind. No one else could see it. No one else could hear it. Yet it was the most important battle of his life. The peahen called again. The sound drifted through the morning air. Gentle. Sweet. Tempting. The spark became larger. The Peacock King's heartbeat quickened. A thought appeared. Just one glance. Just one moment. Nothing more. Desire often speaks softly at first. It rarely announces itself as danger. It arrives disguised as something harmless. Something reasonable. Something innocent. The Peacock King hesitated. The mountain breeze moved through his golden feathers. The sunrise illuminated the world around him. For one final moment, he could still choose differently. He could turn away. He could remain where he was. he could remember. But desire had already entered. And once awareness begins to fade, wisdom becomes difficult to hear. The Peacock King took a step forward. Then another. The hunter remained hidden. Watching. Waiting. The peahen continued calling. The golden bird moved closer. 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 Toward the place where destiny waited. Toward the net concealed among the rocks. Toward the single moment that would undo 700 years of flawless discipline. The mountain remained silent. The wind held its breath. And the Peacock King continued walking toward the greatest mistake of his life. The morning sunlight spread slowly across Dandaka Golden Mountain. Golden rays touched the cliffs. The forests awakened below. Birds greeted the dawn with their songs. The mountain appeared peaceful, unchanged, as though nothing unusual was happening. Yet within the heart of the Peacock King, a storm had begun. For 700 years, his mind had remained clear. 700 years of discipline. 700 years of vigilance. 700 years of watching thoughts arise and pass away. Few beings possessed such mastery. Yet even the strongest fortress can be breached when its gate is left open. The peahen called again. Softly. Sweetly. The sound drifted through the mountain air like a thread pulling gently at the mind. The Peacock King stood motionless. Part of him understood. Part of him knew. Danger. The word echoed somewhere deep within. The familiar wisdom that had guided him for centuries had not disappeared. It was still there. Still speaking. Still warning him. Yet another voice had appeared. A quieter voice. A more seductive voice. A voice saying, just one look. Just one moment. There is no harm. How many mistakes begin exactly this way? Not with great evil. Not with terrible intentions. But with a small compromise. A small exception. A tiny departure from wisdom. The Peacock King looked toward the valley below. The peahen danced gracefully among the rocks. Sunlight shimmered upon her feathers. Her movement seemed effortless. Natural. Beautiful. The desire within him grew stronger. For 7 centuries he had never encouraged such thoughts. He had never fed them, never followed them. Yet now, because they were unfamiliar, they seemed strangely powerful. A thirsty traveler notices water more intensely than one who drinks every day. Likewise, a mind unaccustomed to desire may feel its pull with surprising force when it finally appears. The Peacock King's breathing became uneven. His heart beat faster. The mountain breeze moved through his feathers. Somewhere within, wisdom made one final attempt. Remember. The words seemed to arise from deep within his own consciousness. Remember who you are. Remember your practice. Remember your vows. For a brief moment, he stopped walking. The world seemed suspended. The hunter remained hidden. The peahen waited. The mountain watched. Everything depended upon this moment. One decision. One thought. One choice. The Peacock King closed his eyes. Perhaps he would turn back. Perhaps he would awaken. Perhaps 700 years of mindfulness would prevail. Then the peahen called again. The sound floated through the air. And the spell was broken. The Peacock King's eyes opened. Desire surged forward. Awareness stepped back. And for the first time in 700 years, he forgot. Not completely. Not forever. But enough. Enough to make a mistake. He stepped forward. Then another step. Then another. The hidden net lay directly ahead. Invisible. Waiting. Patient. The hunter watched without breathing. Months of effort. Months of planning. Everything had led to this. The Peacock King moved closer. 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 Then it happened. One foot touched the concealed rope. A slight movement. A faint sound. The net sprang upward. In an instant, the mountain exploded into motion. Ropes tightened. The trap closed. The Peacock King's wings spread instinctively. Too late. The net wrapped around his body. His feet became tangled. His wings became trapped. The mountain echoed with the sudden noise. The Peacock King struggled. Powerful wings beat against the ropes. Golden feathers scattered into the air. The trap shook violently. For a moment, the hunter feared it might break. But the net held. The struggle continued. Then slowly, very slowly, the Peacock King stopped. His breathing remained heavy. His heart raced. The realization arrived. He had been captured. Silence settled over the mountain. The peahen stopped dancing. The hunter remained hidden for several moments longer. Unable to believe his success. The impossible had happened. The bird who had evaded every trap. The bird protected by 700 years of discipline. The bird whom kings desired and hunters sought, had fallen. Not because the trap was stronger, because awareness had weakened. The Peacock King lowered his head. His golden feathers glowed in the morning sunlight. Yet now they seemed dimmer somehow. Not because their color had changed, because his understanding had changed. For the first time, he looked not at the net, not at the hunter, not at the peahen. He looked inward, and there he saw the truth. The trap had not captured him. Desire had. The realization pierced deeper than any spear. The hunter finally emerged from hiding. Slowly, carefully, expecting resistance, expecting rage. Instead, he found something unexpected. The Peacock King was calm, not happy, not resigned, simply calm. The hunter approached cautiously. The golden bird lifted his gaze. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Then the Peacock King surprised him. "My friend." The hunter blinked. He had not expected a bird to speak, much less address him kindly. The Peacock King's voice was gentle. "You have worked very hard." The hunter stared in disbelief. The bird continued, "I do not blame you." The mountain wind whispered through the trees. The hunter felt uneasy. The kindness made him uncomfortable. Because kindness often reveals truths that anger cannot. The Peacock King lowered his eyes. "I blame only myself." The words carried no bitterness, only understanding. The hunter remained silent. The Peacock King continued, "For 700 years I guarded my mind." His gaze drifted toward the distant horizon. "Today, I stopped guarding it." The hunter suddenly felt something he had not expected. Respect. Perhaps even admiration. The bird before him was trapped, defeated, yet somehow more dignified than many kings. The Peacock King spoke softly. One moment. The mountain seemed to listen. Only one moment. His eyes reflected deep contemplation. And 700 years of protection disappeared. The words echoed in the hunter's heart, because he knew they were true. Not only for birds, for everyone. Lives change through moments. Kingdoms change through moments. Destinies change through moments. A single careless decision can undo years of effort. A single moment of awareness can prevent years of suffering. The hunter slowly untangled the net enough to carry his captive safely. The Peacock King offered no resistance. The struggle was over. The lesson had already been learned. As they began descending the mountain together, the sun continued rising into the sky. The forest stretched endlessly below. The wind carried the scent of pine and stone. And with every step, the Peacock King moved farther from the solitude he had known for 7 centuries. Toward the city. Toward the king. Toward a conversation that would change far more than his own fate. For though he had lost his freedom, he had not lost his wisdom. In truth, wisdom had just become deeper. Because some lessons can only be learned through falling. The journey from Dandaka Golden Mountain to the great city of Benares lasted many days. The hunter traveled carefully. Not because he feared escape. The Peacock King never attempted to flee. Not because the ropes were strong. Not because the cage was secure. But because his mind had become peaceful once again. The struggle had ended on the mountain. The lesson had already been accepted. The Peacock King understood something that many beings spend their entire lives avoiding. What has happened, has happened. Regret cannot change the past. Wisdom can only guide the future, so he traveled quietly. Through forests. Across rivers. Along ancient roads connecting villages and towns. Everywhere they passed, people stopped and stared. Word spread quickly. A golden bird had been captured. A creature of legend. A being many believed existed only in stories. Farmers left their fields. Children ran alongside the road. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Everyone wanted a glimpse. And when they saw him, they were astonished. The Peacock King's feathers shimmered beneath the sunlight like living gold. His crimson markings glowed beautifully against the radiant plumage. His posture remained dignified. His eyes calm. There was no panic. No fear. No hatred. Many who expected to see a frightened captive instead found themselves looking upon something that seemed almost royal. Some whispered that he looked more like a king than the human king waiting in Benares. The hunter heard such comments. Yet strangely, he felt no offense. Over the course of the journey, he too had changed. The Peacock King's composure affected him. His wisdom affected him. The hunter had captured a bird. Yet somehow he felt as though he himself had become a student. Eventually the walls of Benares appeared on the horizon. The great city stretched beneath the afternoon sun. Markets bustled. Temple bells echoed through the streets. The palace rose above everything else. Majestic. Powerful. The center of the kingdom. Messengers rushed ahead announcing the hunter's arrival. Excitement spread rapidly through the city. The king's order had finally been fulfilled. The golden peacock had been found. The golden peacock had been captured. The golden peacock had arrived. By the time the hunter reached the palace gates, crowds lined the streets. Thousands gathered. Many climbed rooftops. Others crowded windows. The city had become a sea of curious faces. The palace guards opened the gates. The hunter entered. The Peacock King followed calmly. Inside, the royal court had already assembled. Ministers stood in rows. Brahmins occupied places of honor. Generals waited silently. Servants moved nervously through the hall. At the far end of the chamber sat King Brahmadatta upon a magnificent throne. The ruler leaned forward eagerly. For years, he had imagined this moment. Years of stories. Years of rumors. Years of longing. And now the object of his desire stood before him. The court doors opened fully. Silence spread through the hall. The Peacock King entered. A collective gasp rose from the assembled nobles. Even those who expected beauty found themselves unprepared. The golden feathers reflected the light of countless oil lamps. The bird seemed almost luminous, almost unreal. The king stared, speechless. For several moments, no one moved. No one spoke. The entire court simply watched. Finally, King Brahmadatta rose from his throne. Slowly, almost reverently, he descended the steps, approaching the Peacock King. The ruler had expected triumph. Instead, he felt awe. The bird before him seemed extraordinary in a way that beauty alone could not explain. The Peacock King met his gaze calmly. No fear. No anger. Only quiet understanding. The king spoke first. Are you truly the golden peacock of Dandaka Mountain? The bird inclined his head slightly. I am. A murmur swept through the court. The ministers exchanged astonished glances. The bird spoke. The legends were true. The king's eyes widened. You can speak? The Peacock King smiled gently. Many creatures speak, Your Majesty. The court fell silent once more. The answer carried a depth beyond its words. The king studied him carefully, then asked the question that had consumed his thoughts for years. The question hidden behind all the effort, all the desire, all the obsession. Do you know why I brought you here? The Peacock King looked at him quietly. I believe I do. The king hesitated. Suddenly the words felt difficult to say aloud. Yet honesty compelled him. They say that whoever eats your flesh will never grow old. The court remained motionless. No one dared interrupt. The king continued. They say whoever eats your flesh will become immortal. The words echoed through the hall. The Peacock King listened patiently. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed softly. Not mockingly. Not cruelly. Simply with gentle amusement. The king frowned. You do not believe it? The Peacock King's eyes sparkled with wisdom. Your Majesty. His voice remained calm. If eating my flesh grants immortality. He paused. The court leaned forward. Then I must first die. The king blinked. The bird continued. If death cannot spare me, silence filled the hall. How can my death spare you? The word struck the court like a bell. Simple. Clear. Impossible to ignore. Several ministers lowered their heads. A few Brahmins exchanged thoughtful glances. Even the king remained silent. The logic was undeniable. The Peacock King continued gently. If I possessed immortality, I would not be standing here. The king stared at him. For the first time, doubt entered the belief he had carried for so long. The Peacock King's voice softened. Everything born must eventually pass away. The court became completely still. Kings. The bird looked toward the throne. Animals. He looked toward himself. Mountains. His gaze drifted beyond the palace walls. Even stars. The silence deepened. The lesson touched something profound. Something every person already knew, yet often tried to forget. Impermanence. The king slowly returned to his throne. Not defeated. Not embarrassed. Thoughtful. Very thoughtful. The conversation had already become something entirely different from what he expected. He had intended to question a captive. Instead, he found himself listening to a teacher, and the most important lesson was still to come. For the Peacock King had not yet revealed the true source of his golden feathers, nor the forgotten story of a king who once ruled Benares long before Brahmadatta himself. A story connected to karma, to virtue, to the mysterious journey of the soul. And before this day ended, it would transform the heart of a king. the royal court remained silent. The words of the Peacock King still lingered in the air. If I cannot escape death, how can my flesh grant immortality? No one had an answer. Not the ministers. Not the Brahmins. Not even King Brahmadatta. The logic was simple, yet profound. For many years, the king had pursued a dream, a hope, a fantasy born from fear of impermanence. And now, standing before him, the very creature he sought to consume had gently exposed the illusion. Still, one question remained. If the stories about immortality were false, then what explained the Peacock King's extraordinary appearance? Why was he golden? Why did he seem so different from every other bird? The king leaned forward. His curiosity had replaced his greed. A promising transformation. Yet a transformation nonetheless. Tell me something. The Peacock King nodded. Why are your feathers gold? The court immediately became attentive. Many had wondered the same thing. The Peacock King remained quiet for a moment, as though gazing into a distant memory. A memory older than this life. Older than the mountain. Older than the golden feathers themselves. Then he spoke. My golden body is not a miracle. The court listened carefully. It is the result of causes. The king frowned slightly. Causes? The Peacock King nodded. As every harvest comes from seeds. As every river comes from rain. As every shadow comes from light. So too every life comes from causes. The Brahmins exchanged thoughtful glances. The language sounded familiar. The language of karma. The language of moral consequence. The Peacock King's eyes softened. Then he revealed a truth no one expected. Long ago, the great hall seemed to grow quieter. I was once a king. The court stirred. Several ministers looked confused. The Peacock King continued. Not a king of birds. His gaze moved across the palace. A king of men. The silence deepened. King Brahmadatta stared. The bird before him spoke with complete certainty. Not imagination. Not mythology. Memory. The Peacock King continued. In a distant age, I ruled this very city. A murmur swept through the court. The king's eyes widened. This city? The Peacock King nodded. Yes. He glanced around the throne hall. The palace was different. The streets were different. The people were different. But this was the same kingdom. The court sat motionless. The bird's voice carried an unusual authority, as though he truly remembered. The Peacock King continued. I was a will-turning monarch. The Brahmins immediately lowered their heads. A Chakravartin, a universal ruler, the highest ideal of righteous kingship in the ancient world. Such rulers governed not through fear, but through virtue, not through violence, but through wisdom. The Peacock King's eyes reflected distant centuries. I possessed wealth. The king listened carefully. I possessed power. The ministers listened. I possessed armies. The generals listened. I possessed everything a ruler could desire. The court remained silent. Then the Peacock King added softly, and yet none of it followed me. The word struck deeply, because everyone understood their truth. Wealth remains behind. Power remains behind. Titles remain behind. The journey of death allows no baggage. The Peacock King continued. During that life, I tried to rule wisely. His voice carried no pride, only honesty. I followed the 5 precepts. The Brahmins nodded. The foundation of moral conduct: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no false speech, no intoxication. The Peacock King continued, and I encouraged others to do the same. The king listened intently. The bird's words felt strangely important, as though they contained a lesson meant specifically for him. The Peacock King lowered his gaze. For many years, the kingdom prospered. He smiled softly. Not because I was extraordinary. His eyes lifted. But because virtue creates harmony. The court fell silent once more. How different this sounded from ordinary rulers. Most kings spoke of conquest. Most kings praised strength. Most kings celebrated victory. This king spoke of virtue. The Peacock King continued. When that life ended, his voice grew quieter. I was reborn among the 33 gods. Several courtiers gasped. The heavenly realm of the gods. A destination earned through great merit. The Peacock King nodded gently. Good actions bear good fruit. The lesson was simple, ancient, timeless. Yet even heavenly lives eventually end. Nothing remains forever. Not kingdoms. Not bodies. Not even heavens. The Peacock King's expression became thoughtful. When my heavenly life ended, I was born again. He glanced at his golden feathers. This time as a peacock. The king studied him carefully. If you performed such great virtue. He hesitated. Why were you not born a god again? The question lingered. The Peacock King smiled gently. Because perfection had not yet been reached. The answer surprised many. The bird continued. Even good people make mistakes. The king lowered his gaze. The statement felt personal. The Peacock King continued. In that distant life, I committed a small unwholesome action. The court listened closely. A very small one. The bird paused. And so I was reborn here. The lesson became unmistakable. Karma was not punishment, nor reward. It was consequence. Causes leading naturally to results. Just as seeds become trees. The king sat silently. His heart felt different now. The desire for immortality seemed increasingly foolish. Increasingly empty. Before him sat a being whose wisdom came not from magic. Not from supernatural flesh. But from virtue cultivated over lifetimes. The golden feathers suddenly appeared in a new light. Not as a treasure to consume, but as the visible result of inner goodness. The Peacock King continued softly. My golden body was not given. The court listened. It was earned. The words echoed through the throne hall. Earned through patience. Earned through restraint. Earned through compassion. Earned through virtue. The king looked down at his hands. For the first time, he understood. There are no shortcuts to wisdom. No shortcuts to virtue. No shortcuts to liberation. One cannot eat enlightenment. One cannot purchase goodness. One cannot inherit wisdom. They must be cultivated. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. Life by life. The realization settled deeply within him. And with it, something remarkable began to happen. The king's heart started opening. Not toward desire. Toward reverence. Toward humility. Toward transformation. Yet the greatest lesson of all had not been spoken. For the Peacock King was about to ask for something. Something that would reveal whether the king had truly changed. And whether compassion could spread beyond a single conversation. The fate of countless living creatures now rested upon the answer. The afternoon light filtered through the palace windows. Golden rays stretched across the marble floor. Dust drifted lazily through the air. The great hall remained unusually quiet. The Peacock King's words had touched something deep within everyone present. Even the ministers sat silently. Even the warriors who normally spoke confidently now seemed thoughtful. And King Brahmadatta remained upon his throne, lost in reflection. The desire that had once consumed him no longer felt as powerful. The dream of immortality had begun to dissolve. Like mist beneath the morning sun, for the first time in many years, he was looking beyond himself. Beyond his fears. Beyond his cravings. And whenever that happens, wisdom has room to enter. The Peacock King observed the king carefully. Not with judgment. Not with superiority. With compassion. For he understood something important. Every being struggles. Some struggle with anger. Some with greed. Some with fear. Some with pride. Different chains. The same prison. The Peacock King had recently fallen into the trap of desire himself. How could he condemn another? Instead, he chose a different path. A gentler path. The path of guidance. The path of awakening. The hall remained silent. Then the Peacock King spoke again. Your Majesty. King Brahmadatta looked up. His expression was very different now. Less proud. More open. Yes? The Peacock King's voice was calm. If what I have said is true. The king listened carefully. Then what is truly valuable? The question floated through the throne room. Simple. Yet profound. The king thought carefully. Not gold. Not jewels. Not armies. Not palaces. Not power. At last he answered. Virtue. The Peacock King smiled. The answer pleased him. Yes. The hall felt brighter somehow. As though the conversation itself had become a source of light. The Peacock King continued. If virtue is more valuable than wealth. The king nodded. If compassion is more valuable than power. Again the king nodded. The bird lowered his head slightly. Then may I ask something of you? The king immediately replied. You may ask anything. Several ministers looked surprised. The king had spoken without hesitation. Yet his words were sincere. The Peacock King paused. Then gently revealed his request. Release the birds. Silence. The king blinked. The birds? The Peacock King nodded. All of them. The king thought for a moment. Then remembered. Within the palace grounds existed countless cages. Rare birds. Beautiful birds. Exotic birds collected from distant lands. Some had been gifts. Some had been purchased. Others had been captured. All confined. All imprisoned. The Peacock King's eyes softened. They were born to fly. The words carried quiet power. The king looked through the palace windows toward the gardens beyond. He could almost hear the fluttering of wings, the restless sounds of creatures longing for freedom. The Peacock King continued. They sing. The hall listened. But not because they are happy. The king lowered his gaze. They sing because they remember the sky. A deep silence followed. No one spoke. No one needed to. The truth was already working within their hearts. The Peacock King glanced around the throne hall, then spoke even more softly. Every creature fears captivity. The ministers listened. The deer fears the hunter. The bird fears the cage. The fish fears the net. His gaze returned to the king. And all beings treasure freedom. King Brahmadatta sat motionless. Something within him was changing. The transformation was no longer intellectual. It had become emotional, human, real. For the first time, he imagined life from the perspective of those he ruled. The weak, the vulnerable, the voiceless. How often had their suffering gone unseen? How often had power made him forget? The king slowly rose from his throne. The entire court watched. No one knew what he would do. The Peacock King remained silent, patient. The king descended the steps, not toward the bird, toward the palace doors. Then he turned and spoke. His voice echoed through the hall. Open every cage. The ministers stared. The servants stared. The guards stared. The king repeated the order. Louder. Open every cage. The command spread immediately. Servants rushed from the hall. Guards hurried through the palace. Messengers carried the order throughout the royal grounds. Within minutes, doors were opening everywhere. Golden cages, silver cages, wooden cages, large cages, small cages, one after another. Locks clicked. Doors swung open. At first, many birds hesitated. Captivity had lasted so long. Freedom seemed unfamiliar. Then one bird flew. A small green bird, straight into the sky. Another followed. Then another. And another. Soon hundreds of wings filled the air. The palace gardens erupted with movement. Colorful birds soared upward, circling above the city, calling to one another, rejoicing. The sky itself seemed alive. People throughout Benares stopped to watch. Children pointed upward. Merchants left their shops. Workers paused their tasks. No one had ever seen so many birds flying free at once. Back inside the throne hall, the king listened to the distant sounds. The joyful cries. The beating wings. The celebration of freedom. A smile slowly appeared upon his face. Not the smile of someone gaining something. The smile of someone finally letting go. The Peacock King watched quietly. Then he spoke one final time. There is another freedom. The king looked toward him. The bird's eyes were filled with kindness. The freedom that comes when the heart releases greed. The words settled deeply. For now the king understood. Cages are not only made of iron. Many are built from desire. From attachment. From fear. And those cages can imprison even kings. The palace remained peaceful. The afternoon sun slowly moved across the sky. The birds continued soaring above the city. And within the heart of King Brahmadatta, a door had opened as well. A door leading toward wisdom. Toward compassion. Toward a different way of ruling. The transformation was nearly complete. Only one final step remained. One final act. One final lesson. And before the sun set, the king would make a vow so powerful that its effects would reach far beyond the palace walls. Far beyond the city itself. Indeed, according to the ancient story, its effects would touch every captive creature in the world. The great hall remained quiet. The afternoon sun slowly drifted westward. Golden light filled the palace. Outside, countless birds still circled above the city. Their wings flashed like jewels against the sky. Their cries carried joy. Freedom. The sound of freedom. King Brahmadatta stood motionless. Listening. watching, feeling something within himself changing. The Peacock King sat calmly before him. His golden feathers glowed softly beneath the sunlight. Yet now, no one saw him merely as a beautiful bird. The ministers saw a teacher. The Brahmins saw wisdom. The king saw a mirror reflecting both his flaws and his potential. The hall remained silent. Then the king slowly approached the Peacock King. His footsteps echoed softly across the marble floor. Every eye followed him. When he reached the golden bird, something extraordinary happened. The ruler of Benares bowed. Not slightly. Not symbolically. He bowed deeply. The entire court gasped. For kings were rarely seen bowing before anyone. Yet Brahmadatta understood something now. Wisdom deserves respect wherever it appears. Whether it comes from a sage, a monk, a child, or even a bird, the Peacock King lowered his head in return. Not accepting worship, accepting sincerity. The king spoke softly. "My friend." The word surprised many. Hours earlier he had viewed the Peacock King as prey. Now he addressed him as a friend. The transformation was complete. "I came seeking immortality." The king's voice carried honesty. "I found wisdom instead." The Peacock King smiled gently. "That is a far greater treasure." The hall fell silent once more. Because everyone knew it was true. Immortality prolongs life. Wisdom transforms it. The king remained thoughtful. Then he asked one final question. "What should I do now?" The question came from the heart. Not from curiosity. Not from debate. From genuine humility. The Peacock King's eyes softened. Outside the palace windows, birds continued soaring freely through the sky. The sight seemed to answer the question before words arrived. The golden bird spoke slowly. "Rule with compassion." The king listened. "Protect the weak." The ministers listened. "Speak truthfully." The Brahmins listened. "Practice generosity." The servants listened. And remember that power is a responsibility. The hall absorbed every word. The Peacock King continued. A ruler's greatness is measured not by how many obey him. The king stood completely still, but by how many flourish under his care. The sentence settled into the silence like a sacred bell. The king felt tears gathering in his eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of awakening. Because for the first time, he truly understood kingship. Not domination. Service. Not possession. Stewardship. Not fear. Compassion. The Peacock King then lifted his gaze toward the sky beyond the palace windows. The afternoon was fading. Soon evening would arrive. Soon he would return to the mountains. Yet before departing, one final act remained. The king sensed it too. He turned toward the assembled court. His voice rose throughout the hall. Strong, clear, certain. Hear my decree. The entire palace became silent. From this day forward, he paused. All creatures under my protection shall be treated with kindness. A murmur spread through the hall. The king continued. No unnecessary killing. The generals lowered their heads. No needless cruelty. The ministers listened carefully. No captivity without cause. The servants exchanged glances. The king's voice became even stronger. May all beings enjoy the freedom they seek. The words echoed through the palace, through the gardens, through the city itself. And according to the ancient story, something remarkable happened. At that very moment, throughout the kingdom, cages were opened. Traps were broken. Ropes loosened. Creatures long confined found freedom. Birds flew. Animals escaped. Lives changed. The vow of a compassionate ruler spread outward like ripples upon a lake, touching far more lives than anyone could count. The Peacock King listened quietly. Then he nodded. The lesson had taken root. The seed had found fertile soil. Even the wisest teacher can ask for no more. As evening approached, preparations were made for his departure. The king ordered the finest carriage. The Peacock King declined. The king offered royal escorts. The Peacock King declined. The king offered treasures. The Peacock King smiled. What treasure could I possibly need? The king laughed softly. For the first time in many years, his laughter carried no anxiety, no ambition, no greed, only peace. The palace gates opened. The people of Benares gathered once more. This time not to witness a captive, but to honor a teacher. The Peacock King stepped into the fading sunlight. The city fell silent. Men bowed. Women bowed. Children bowed. Not because he was beautiful, because he was wise. The golden bird paused at the edge of the city, then looked back one final time. King Brahmadatta stood at the palace entrance. Their eyes met. No words were needed. The lesson had been shared. The gratitude had been understood. The Peacock King spread his magnificent wings. Golden light flashed across the evening sky. Then he rose, higher, higher, higher. The city watched until he became a distant spark against the horizon. And eventually, even that disappeared. The journey home was peaceful. The mountains welcomed him. The winds greeted him. The familiar summit of Dandaka Golden Mountain awaited. At sunset, the Peacock King returned to the place where he had spent 7 centuries. The sacred stone remained. The sky remained. The silence remained. Only he had changed. For wisdom deepens through experience. Even painful experience. He faced the setting sun, as he had done thousands of times before, and once more, he recited the sacred verses. Not as a bird who had never fallen, but as a bird who had fallen and understood why. There is a difference. A profound difference. For untouched wisdom can become pride. Tested wisdom becomes compassion. The evening breeze moved gently across the mountain. Stars began appearing overhead. One by one. The world settled into night. And perhaps, dear friend, that is the deepest lesson hidden within this ancient tale. The Golden Peacock was not extraordinary because he never made mistakes. He was extraordinary because he learned from them. For 700 years, he guarded his mind. Yet one moment of desire overcame him. And still, that moment did not destroy him. Because wisdom returned. Awareness returned. Compassion returned. The fall became part of the path. Just as our own mistakes can become teachers, our failures can become lessons. Our struggles can become understanding. No one walks perfectly. No one remains mindful every moment. No one escapes temptation forever. Yet every moment offers another chance to awaken. Another chance to begin again. The stars shone brightly above Dandaka Golden Mountain. The Peacock King rested peacefully beneath them. The kingdom prospered below. The birds remained free. The king ruled with greater compassion. And the lesson endured. Across centuries. Across generations. Across lives. A lesson as simple as it is profound: guard the mind. But if you stumble, do not despair. Return to wisdom. Return to awareness. Return to compassion. And begin again. Good night.